Origin just homes to reaction. This is World War III. Okay, Operation Paul Bunyan. Sounds like some kind of a joke. Is that a real thing? Operation Paul Bunyan? Obviously it is. This is not a channel to make jokes, I guess. But yeah, Operation Paul Bunyan. This is my channel, The Fat Electrician. Yes, another Fat Electrician video. This is a really great channel, I guess. Is something I'm realizing slowly. All the, let's just say, history that people should know about but don't type of content. So the more I've watched these videos, like the more, let's just say, I know things that I should have known but don't. So obviously the badass Navy guy, right? The badass politician. Now, I don't know who badass is going to be here, but yeah, it's World War III. So there's a war because of a tree. I don't know what happened. Somebody cut a tree and that caused a war. Who knows? But it's going to be fun. Remember, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the next Sunday. There's a link in the description. And yeah, let's watch it.
Yes, that time that North Korea told America that we couldn't trim a tree, and America was legitimately ready to start World War III.
North Korea.
World War Tree, if you will.
Yes.
Today we're talking about the Korean axe murder incident and America's response to that incident, Operation Paul Bunyan. But first, this video is brought to you by the two biggest sponsors of the channel. We've got Zydax custom gaming PCs, computers built right here in America with American-made tech support, and they have a lifetime warranty. They can build you anything you want to any spec you want, but also they have some that are already pre-built and ready to ship. And then, of course, my favorite sporting goods store, Shields. They've got over 30 amazing retail locations all across the United States. I'm not just saying that because they're giving me money. It's legitimately the best sporting goods store I've ever set foot in. But if you don't live near one of the retail locations, they have an even better online store with price matching and satisfaction guaranteed. I'm going to have links and discount codes for both those sponsors in the description down below and on my website, thefatelectrician.com. Let's get back to the video. All right, once upon a time, July 1953, North and South Korean leadership would meet in a small village known as Punjong, right near the 38th parallel, where they would sign an armistice that would technically only pause, but essentially end the Korean War. From this moment forward, we have the official military demarcation line, essentially the line in the sand separating North and South Korea. Surrounding that demarcation line is a 2.5 mile wide, 160 mile long buffer zone known as the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. And that's pretty much it. The Iron Curtain goes up, North Korea becomes the world's largest secret society, and the entire world gets to stand by and watch as there is a competition between capitalism and communism to see which one is actually better. And well, 70 years later, the results are visible from outer space. Wait, let me guess. You're going to say that's not real communism. Well, I'll tell you what. Every time anything bad happens under capitalism, I'm just going to respond by saying, oh, well, that's not real capitalism. How about that? Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways.
That is so fucking true. Every time people bitch about capitalism, you can just say that like, this is not what real capitalism is, right? People bitch about communism the same way. Like, real communism done right is like... Wishful thinking is one thing that pisses me off. Like, communism has been done multiple times. Doesn't matter if the root of it is the same, but it failed. It fails every single time. And yeah, North Korea is communism. What you talking about? It's a communism can be, right? It's the core mentality. It's communism. Like, obviously, no things are gonna be just like textbook. This is what communism should be. They're not gonna follow all that like to the T, right? So, but in the end, it is communism. So just like America, if you just see few decades of history, that changes. Everything about that changes. Doesn't make it mean it's not real capitalism or something. It is capitalism, just like there's communism. And this is about Pyongyang thing. This is so crazy. Where did it go?
Better, and well, 70 years later, the results are visible from outer.
Oh, there you go. Seriously, the Pyongyang thing. Look at that. It's like entire North Korea, only Pyongyang is like lit up, and there is a hotel there, which is like, I think, taller than Eiffel Tower and taller than the Empire State Building, or was it Chrysler Building? But something like that. It's like Empire State Building level of tall. But it's wide as well. It's like this weird cone type structure. It's really wide starting from the bottom. And it's just like, it has like thousands of rooms. It's a fucking hotel, right? And yet nobody basically goes there. It's been there for multiple decades now. And it makes sense, like North Korea is not really a holiday destination or tourism destination, let's be honest. But it's there. They built that hotel. Just like right now the biggest stadium is like Narendra Modi Stadium in India. But before that, it was in Pyongyang. I mean, there's no sport there. I mean, they still holds rallies and things. But besides that, it is empty. how does infrastructure work in North Korea? I'm a civil contractor, so this type of thing I think about a lot with the hotel, like 3,000 room. How do you maintain it if nobody uses it? Like biggest issue when it comes to anything industry or any type of place is like if it's not being used, that's when the biggest issue comes from. Like it's really hard to catch flaws. It's really hard to know anything, right? And it will cause problems. And how do they fix it? Especially when it's about the whole city. I'm guessing problem do arise, and they I guess fixes it willy-nilly. I guess nobody knows it, but they're not going to tell the world, is it? But still, infrastructure is something that really makes me think about. All right, back to World War III.
Is that village where the treaty was signed would go on to become the JSA, or the Joint Security Area, and in theory this was supposed to be the only point where North and South Korean forces could intermingle. The North Koreans could pass the armistice line into South Korea, and vice versa, provided everybody stayed within the confines of this particular village. Obviously, the point of having a place like this was so that everybody could have a place to exchange prisoners, have peace talks, what have you, but naturally the intermingling of North Korean and UN forces over the course of time would lead to a bunch of fights breaking out. Luckily, they foresaw this coming, and there was very strict rules about having firearms inside of the JSA, and generally speaking, nobody really ever had them on them. Despite that, there was so many skirmishes so often that the UN would try to get North Korea to agree that they should still abide by the demarcation line. North Koreans stay on their half of the JSA, and South Korean and UN forces stay on their half of the JSA. North Korea consistently refused. And that's all the background info you need. So, fast forward, August 6, 1976. Inside the JSA, there's a bridge. That bridge is called the Bridge of No Return because once you cross that bridge, you not only cross the military demarcation line, but you also cross the border to the JSA, meaning that you are now inside of North Korea, hence the name, the Bridge of No Return. As you can see here on the JSA side of the bridge, there is military checkpoint 3. As I'm sure you can imagine, that's very important because, well, if the North Koreans are going to attack, they're probably going to incorporate that bridge somehow. They've got a military observation post right there. If the North Koreans are coming, they're going to send off the warning. Next thing you know, all of America knows that you're here. Now all of the UN knows that you're here. Alright, but the problem is, right next to checkpoint 3, there's a big-ass 100-foot-high poplar tree, and that tree is blocking the vision from all the other checkpoints from being able to see checkpoint 3, meaning that, in theory, the North Koreans could invade, take out checkpoint 3, build up a big enemy force while using this tree as cover, and then take out the rest of the JSA. So, this tree is a security issue, we gotta get rid of it. Okay, so this is not a big deal whatsoever. That tree is inside the JSA, it's on the South Korean side, so it's technically in South Korea. So, they send out some South Korean soldiers with some axes. They're going to go chop down this tree. That's going to be the end of it. No big deal whatsoever. Then the North Koreans show up being dicks, and they're like, no, you're not allowed to cut this tree down because we said so. That's why. And the South Koreans are like, what? Okay, well, I'm going to go get the Americans, and then we're going to come back, and then we're all going to cut down the tree together. Bye. All right, fast forward a couple weeks, August 18th, 1976. This time, a 15-man working party comprised of Americans and South Koreans show up at this tree to cut it down. And once again, the North Koreans show up almost immediately. This time, there's 11 of them, and they are being led by...
I mean, look, obviously, the reason why they say it is because it gives them advantage, the tree. Why would they want you to cut it down? Second of all, it's like the joint agreement that, middle area, whatever, right? Demilitarized zone, part of it, whatever. So they can just argue like this is, we both have to be in agreement for you to do something, this and that, right? And in the end, North Korea doesn't really acknowledge South Korea in the first place. It's like all one Korea. So there's way too many layers to that shit. So I can see how that becomes a problem. But the biggest problem is just that, what is one tree really that important, obstacle? So they can use that as a cover. Like, don't we have anything like, I don't know, put just camera or something there? I don't know. Like, isn't there any other sensors, whatever, like radar or shit? I don't know, man. Is there no technology that we can use that tree becomes insignificant? I don't know.
By an officer nicknamed the Bulldog because he is well known and has a reputation for starting shit inside the JSA and instigating a bunch of fights. He then proceeds to tell the Americans that they have to stop trimming that tree because that particular poplar tree was planted by none other than Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea.
Shit.
To which the Americans, I'm paraphrasing,
That's the stamp there. This is, planted by our God himself. Like, you can't even touch this shit.
obviously, but they were like, oh, really? Did he? He planted this tree? Kim Il-sung, the same guy that you guys think invented the hamburger,
Yeah,
and the
it's a
burrito.
god basically
And the
for them.
first time he ever golfed, he golfed a 38 under par with 11 hole-in-ones.
He never
and his
poops, right?
body's so efficient that he doesn't have to use the bathroom because he
Yeah.
doesn't generate waste. That guy, he planted this tree. I don't give a shit. So they turned around and kept cutting down this.
See, they're just like, this is our God. Our God planted this tree. You can't cut down the tree. That's it. After that, it just becomes like, if you cut down the tree, like, doesn't matter, like, if they just use that excuse to just bolster their claim or whatever. But once you say it, you can't take it back. And now it will become like a threat to the image or something like this. Direct attack at North Korea or something like that. They'll probably use that.
This tree. So at this point, Officer Bulldog sends a runner across the bridge of no return into North Korea. A couple minutes later, 2 trucks show up with 30 more North Korean soldiers, and they all get out with clubs. At this point, Officer Bulldog tells the working party again, stop cutting down the tree or else. And the working party, under the impression they're not actually going to do anything, ignores them and just keeps cutting down the tree, at which point Officer Bulldog famously takes off his watch, wraps it in a handkerchief, sets it down, and yells, Chukyo, meaning kill in North Korean, at which point all of the soldiers attacked the members of the working party. Every member of the working party was injured and 2 Americans were killed. Shit has officially hit the fan. The entire US military is put on DEFCON 3, which is the highest level of readiness that the military can go to without actually being at war. The president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are
Wait a minute, what? DEFCON 3 roundhouse, Air Force 15 into mobilization, force readiness increase above normal levels. 2 is like fast pace, armed forces 6 hours or less to deploy engage. I guess DEFCON 2 means we are under invasion or something. Is that what it is? Like, okay, like this is like, it's panicky situation. And DEFCON 1 is like everything's fucked, just arm the nukes. Is that it? Nuclear war imminent, maximum readiness. Of course, these DEFCONs were invented in the Cold War or something. Their main thing, as far as I can see, is based around nuclear bombs, like, because that was the thing, right? Like, if everything will revolve around nuclears, right? So probably around that. But yeah, I guess you can still use that. I don't know.
The military can go to without actually being at war. The president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are dragged into the bunker underneath the White House to begin getting briefed by the CIA, and North Korea is shitting its pants because a couple of their guys just may have kicked off World War III. Within 4 hours, the North Koreans issue a public statement trying to pin the entire
World
thing
War
on America,
Korea.
saying the
Is it gonna be
Americans
three
that were
going?
there instigated the entire thing, and it's their fault. Then North Korean leadership goes before the Non-Aligned Nations Committee, which for the purposes of this story, just think of it as like not NATO. Here's NATO, here's the non-aligned nations. You get the idea. They then try to pass a resolution that says they should all condemn America for our violent actions, and America needs to leave the Korean Peninsula altogether. And somehow this passes. At which point America basically looks over and says, that's nice that you guys passed a little rule. Go ahead and try to enforce it. I dare you.
Whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head
Oh,
down
this is so
and I will
good.
rain down on a godly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up.
Meanwhile, inside the president's bunker, all kinds of crazy ideas are getting thrown around, some of which include bombarding the entire DMZ with artillery fire, using Navy SEALs and precision-guided munitions to take out the North Korean barracks inside of the JSA, essentially killing all...
Look, if this was if this would happen today, it's like the pace would be like, oh come on, is this happening? This is probably not happening type of thing for both sides. I'm guessing this happened around this, not that far away from the actual Korean wars, at least compared to today. Right now it's like multiple decades. Around this time it was always just some time. So they are generally thinking that this will kick off war, like Americans will literally attack, right? They probably see this as aggression completely, right? So I like how they just went to all non-NATO people and just like condemn. I guess they just condemned it based on thinking, oh God, is this happening again? They have nukes. What is happening? So I think they just panically like whatever causes, like they saw America getting angry basically or coming back with retaliation. So whoever they saw as an aggressor, they just moved against him just to make sure that nothing happens. Or they basically back away thinking, oh, world is condemning us. We shouldn't attack or some shit like that, just basically hoping for that. So another world war doesn't break out. That's what they meant. Not that they wanted to support North Korea or something. It's just like they didn't want another war.
all the North Koreans that had anything to do with this, destroying the Bridge of No Return, and my personal favorite, just dropping a nuclear bomb off the coast of North Korea just to prove a point. At this point, the president chimes in and he's like, no, this has to be an appropriate response. We don't want to overkill this situation and kick off World War III. So that begs the question, what is an appropriate response to the president? Well, that depends on the president, and the president at this particular time was none other than Gerald Ford. You see, that's absolutely terrifying, and most of you have no idea why, because Gerald Ford doesn't have much brand recognition in modern times, so let me fill you in. Gerald Ford played college football at the University of Michigan and had offers to go to the NFL from the Lions and the Green Bay Packers, and turned both of them down because he wanted to be a boxing coach at Yale before he went into law school to become a politician. Somewhere along the way, this guy becomes friends with Richard Nixon. Fast forward, he's ready to retire. His friend Richard Nixon is the president of the United States, and Richard Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, gets accused of taking bribes and has to step down as vice president. At which point, Nixon calls up his old buddy and is like, hey, will you fill in as VP for me? So Gerald Ford, not wanting to let down his buddy, is like, sure, absolutely, I'll come be the vice president. So he serves as VP for a little bit, and then Watergate happens, Richard Nixon gets impeached, and Gerald Ford becomes the 38th
Nixon's like, I'm out. Look at that, so infamous, like the helicopter scene, right?
president of the United States and the only president in American history that was never elected as VP or the president. And the first thing he does as president is he gives a presidential pardon to his buddy Richard Nixon, who just got impeached, so he can't go to prison. And this pisses off absolutely everybody. Left, right, middle, doesn't matter. Everybody is furious with Gerald Ford over this. There is a 0% chance that he is ever going to get reelected right out of the gate. All right, so just so we're on the same page, President Gerald Ford, your traditional football playing, boxing, manly man that didn't want the job as president in the first place and has zero hopes of ever getting reelected, as well as having a history of being willing to sacrifice his personal image and the future of his career just to help out the homies, and we're going to find out what this man deems as an appropriate response. But one thing's for certain, and it is that popular...
Look, man, that the nuke thing sounds right, and it just like sounds good of a flex. But the point of the Cold War was that there is no flex, right? Doesn't matter how powerful you are, whatever you do to anybody, your opposition will see that's an aggression. If they drop a nuke near North Korea at a sea or whatever, Soviet Union would be pissed off. They'll be like, so, this is like a Cold War time period, right? So that is never happening. So I guess somebody floated that idea, but they're never dropping that bomb in, Sea of Japan or whatever. They're never doing that. And not to mention, Japan is still there, right? You drop bombs at Japan, and a few decades later, you're gonna drop close to them at sea. Like, that's not happening.
Tree is absolutely coming down. Fast forward 3 days later, August 21st, 7 a.m., a bunch of American and South Korean vehicles roll into the JSA, and Operation Paul Bunyan would officially begin. Inside of those vehicles, there's a 16-man tree trimming crew, and they are being escorted by 2 platoons of American grunts, roughly 60 guys, all carrying axe handles and pistols, ready to teach the North Koreans a lesson if they decide they want to try to stop them again. Now, is there supposed to be 60 guys in the JSA carrying firearms? No, but...
This is so classic, like a mafia mob mentality. This like, oh yeah, you want to this is so America, right? Like 40s 50s type of America mentality. This, I think, is 70s or something. This is happening. This is so that old like Godfather type of America mentality. Like, oh yeah, tough guy, you want this? Here's my people. Try to stop us now. That's appropriate response.
They're just carrying pistols. It's the smallest gun Uncle Sam has to offer because America is trying very, very hard to be appropriate. Also, they brought a tank, which, as you can see, is basically a really small tank with a snowplow on the front and an enormous gun.
That's huge.
It's average, okay?
That's pretty pathetic.
Hey, even if it is a little bit on the smaller side of average.
A single grain of rice can tip the scale.
And if that wasn't enough, they're also being backed up by 64 Black Berets, the South Korean Special Forces guys, one of which would actually go on to be the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in. Okay, here's the deal with the Black Berets. As a minimum requirement, every single one of them has to be a black belt in Taekwondo, and I know what you're thinking. My nephew got a black belt in Taekwondo from the YMCA when he was like 13 years old. Big deal, okay? I realize it's the same word. Trust me, it's not the same thing. These guys can
Learning boxing from Mike Tyson would be different than learning something from your, I don't know, your gym coach or something. Of course, it's different. Both are boxing, so I guess it's literally different. How you learn it. Like, learning the moves alone isn't everything, right? Way too many, kid, like small, like this, like 3 foot small kids walking around who are like black belt. It's not gonna be the same thing as everything else, is it? Right? They're not gonna go to UFC and kick everybody's asses.
And the best part of all is the Taekwondo's not even going to come into play because as all the vehicles pull up, the 16-man tree trimming crew runs out, they start cutting down the tree, the Americans get out with their pistols and their axe handles, the South Koreans pull up, they get out, and they start unstrapping something from the bottom of their vehicles. Against the orders of their president, they had all snuck in M16s, grenade launchers, crew-served weapons, anti-tank weapons, and some of them even had claymore.
It's like Americans and them had a meeting, like it's a night somewhere, it's in a bunker or something. Oh, this is what official wants. Well, fuck officials. Well, I'm gonna strap my fucking weapons in. This shit is going down today.
Strapped to their chest. The South Korean Special Forces has officially come to party. At this point, they're looking over at the Americans like, really? You guys brought axe handles and pistols? What are you doing, playing fucking Jenga? At this point, the Americans are like, hey, I appreciate the effort. You guys are awesome. That's great. But here's the deal. The only thing better than breaking the rules and getting away with it is not having to break the rules and still getting away with it. AKA, you just gotta find that loophole and make them make new rules later because they didn't know that was an option. You see, they told us we can't have guns in the JSA. They didn't say anything about above the JSA. Because circling overhead, there is 20 Huey utility helicopters, and on those helicopters is an entire company of...
I like all the South Koreans are like with all the training and M16. Really? Really? You Americans are bitches. What you doing with that? And the Americans just say, look up. Just helicopters everywhere.
American infantry, roughly 120 19-year-old athletic alcoholics with machine guns, and as soon as those helicopters touch down, they are ready to get out and start kicking ass. But here's the deal with that, it wouldn't be appropriate to send out a bunch of utility helicopters without a security escort, so they're being accompanied by 7 Cobra attack helicopters. And just in case that's not enough, above that there is somewhere between 12 and 20 B-52 Strato Fortresses that just got in from Guam that are now doing hot laps around the entire demilitarized zone, each of which is carrying like 70,000 pounds worth of bombs, some of which were allegedly nuclear warheads. In addition to that, there's an entire fighter squadron of American F-4 Phantoms that just got in from Okinawa.
I can't, man. I can't go through this. It's so insane. It's just escalated. Oh, by the way, we also have bombers that might have nukes. So what you want to say now, man?
And a bunch of South Korean F-5s, as well as a bunch of American F-111s that just got in from Idaho. In addition to that, there's roughly 10,000 troops on standby just inside the South Korean border, ready to run in if they're needed. And on top of that, there's another 12,000 troops already en route to South Korea, just in case. Oh, and now the USS Midway, a fucking aircraft carrier, and her entire security detail are parked off the North Korean coast. And all
Just
of this
send
was done
nuclear
in a span
submarine.
of
That's
3
only
days.
left now.
America has probably just conducted the greatest showing of force ever and turned this poplar tree into the largest game of fuck around and find out in human history. Cut back to the men on the ground. Operation Paul Bunyan has been going on for approximately 5 minutes. The 5 longest minutes in human history of an entire army watching 16 dudes trim a tree and not a single sign of a North Korean anywhere. Which is really weird. Normally they would have been here by now. What is going on? At this point, the American leadership comes to the realization that the North Koreans know exactly what's going on. There's a 0% chance that they don't, and they have decided that their best option is to not show up at all, and then later on they're going to play it off like they had no idea the entire thing actually happened, making it appear as though America's show of force was not that big of a deal. At this point, the American leadership takes a deep breath, and they're like, okay, we have to keep this appropriate. We're the bigger people in this. That's a great PR move by the North Koreans. Doesn't matter. We know what we did. We know what we accomplished, and that should be enough. I'm just kidding. The American leadership immediately sent a transmission to the North Koreans telling them that they were there for, and I quote, to finish the work left unfinished. Now, the North Korean frontline...
I like how you pull out a book there. Let me go. All fat electrician, him needed is like a glasses. Okay, let me check the book here. This is insane. This story is insane. As soon as it's like, oh, Americans like, okay, we need to be respected. They were a bigger man. I'm like, oh, no, this is not happening. No way. No way Americans are doing that. So of course, they're going to flex.
communications just go absolutely nuts. We know this because American intelligence was monitoring their frontline communications, and one of the intel analysts that was listening said, and I quote, "This move blew their fucking minds." At this point, the North Koreans are absolutely terrified, but they have to do something because they've got way too much pride not to. So, all of the North Korean troops in the immediate area are ordered to go to the Bridge of No Return. Within a matter of minutes, a bunch of trucks pull up on the other side of the Bridge of No Return, and 150 North Korean soldiers get out, and they proceed to stand there and watch silently for what I presume to be the longest 35 minutes of their entire lives as they watch the Americans finish cutting down this tree. And that's pretty much it. The Americans finished trimming this tree. They left a big ass stump there so the North Koreans never ever forgot about it. And then once that stump rotted away, they put a plaque there in honor of the two soldiers that lost their lives, Lieutenant Mark Barrett and Captain Arthur Boniface. North Korea was then also ordered to pay reparations to their family members. In addition to that, the North Koreans issued a statement saying the entire situation was regrettable, which according to the experts is the closest thing to an apology that you will ever get out of the North Koreans. And then to absolutely everybody's surprise, on August 25th, the North Koreans come back to the negotiating table and they're like, "Hey, remember that idea you guys have had for like the last 20 years where you wanted to split the JSA in half to separate North and South Korean forces so a bunch of dumb shit didn't happen? Yeah, we think we'd finally like to do that." So yeah, in conclusion, I guess this has been the story about how World War III almost got started by a tree.
See, the thing with that is, like, I'm pretty sure they thought they're going to be the aggressor one. North Korea thought that. But after seeing how much America can go to, basically all the length they would go to with all the bombers and shit, now they panic the other way. Like, if we don't split it, they are the one who's going to be aggressive going forward. They are the one who's going to cause issues. And going to make our life living hell in JSA. So that's why, like, okay, you know what? Let's just split it. That's better for us.
Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. These military operation ones keep getting weirder and weirder. I should probably talk about that time that America accidentally turned a manhole cover into the fastest man-made object of all time because they yeeted it into outer space with a nuclear warhead.
You can't just say that and walk. What the fuck? I want that video. We can't just walk. Manhole cover. God damn it. Okay, people told me in the last reaction I did that, you know, I should always watch it all the way to end. There's some shit like this that he said. Okay. I guess in the last video, I didn't watch the last point, right? About the badass, badass military guy, basically. Why am I saying hard? I don't know. Marine. Why do I have a hard time saying Marine? Badass Marine guy, right? Dan Daly. When I watched the video, like, he said something then, I did check it out. It was some reference to something. I wouldn't have get it anyway. So, okay, that's... But yeah, from now on, I'm going to check all the end. There's still... He's leaving crumbs there for us to, like, what the fuck was that? I guess he's going to make that video. Why would he mention it otherwise? So, yeah, that's going to be it. This video was posted yesterday, so I'm pretty sure he didn't make that video. I mean, why would he mention it now? So, yeah, he's going to make a video in the future about the manhole cover. That is one thing I'm definitely looking out for. Yeah, World War III. I mean, this is insane. Nowadays, you wouldn't get that kind of apology from North Korea because they have nukes now. So they're going to flex a lot. They would never, ever come close to giving any form of apology. Around this time, that wasn't the case. But now, yeah. As soon as you get nuke, like, you're going to flex like nobody. So North Korea is not giving apologies anytime soon. But yeah, this was insane. Obviously, this wouldn't happen in today's world. But around this time, I guess this was 1970s or something, right? The paper was from 1976 or something, so maybe, yeah. So, around that time, all the wars and things are not as old as today, obviously. Right now, it's like multiple decades since these kind of major wars happened around the world. Ignoring the latest one, ignoring that, like, one instance, we haven't seen major wars for, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades or whatever, right? So, around this time, that wasn't the case. Cold War was still on. So this kind of response from America makes sense. But one thing I've noticed, America was way too aggressive in the late 20th century during the Cold War, right? You wouldn't expect this kind of answer from America today. America won't just send out this many things today, right? They will send out some, like, nuclear submarines, this and that, just as a deterrent so people get scared, but not this kind of a force. But around this time, it makes sense. Just over a tree. Just imagine this, like, this is actually going through you kids learning this in history. There was a war, almost a war, because of a tree. They should really learn things like this in history. That would actually make things interesting. People would actually give attention to history subject in their school rather than just like doing bare minimum, getting passed and just walking away. Right, well, that was the World War III Operation Paul Bunyan by the channel The Fat Electrician. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.